Welcome to my story library. Hello, dear readers. Today I bring you a narrative that crosses time like an ancient perfume that emerges from yellowed letters. It is a story of redemption and true love, set in Victorian London of 1878, where the steam from trains mingles with the secrets of high society. Imagine a young woman who loses everything in one night: fortune, name, future, and finds herself forced to accept a marriage proposal from the man who destroyed her family. But what if that union, forged in the ice of desperation, could bloom in the heat of unexpected love? This is the story of Charlotte and Edmund, where each unspoken glance is worth more than 1,000 broken promises. And you, dear viewer, from where are you watching this literary journey? Leave your city in the comments. I love to know which hearts we reach around the world. Don't forget, if this story touches your soul, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more narratives that awaken the heart. Year 1878, London, England, Victorian era. In the metropolis where progress dances with tradition, our story begins. The will unfolded like a map of ruin. Charlotte Whitmore remained motionless in the burgundy velvet armchair that would soon no longer belong to her, while the nasal voice of the notary cut through the thick air of the salon like a cold blade. All goods of the Whitmore family are hereby declared null and void, in accordance with the decision of the London Commercial Court. The words danced around her like mocking ghosts. 4 years. 4 long years had passed since Edmund Ashford had risen in that courtroom and, with firm voice and unwavering gaze, testified against her father. 4 years since Charlotte's world crumbled like a house of cards under the London rain. The 22-year-old woman delicately touched the cameo at her neck, last inheritance from a mother who died, bringing into the world a brother who did not survive the winter. It was all that remained of a lineage that had once been synonymous with honor. 1 week, only 1 week to abandon the house where every floorboard held memories of a golden childhood. What secrets did Edmund Ashford carry to have destroyed an entire family? And why now was her destiny in the hands of her very executioner? The wind howled through the narrow alleys of Whitechapel like lost souls seeking redemption. Charlotte adjusted the frayed shawl over her shoulders while watching the snowflakes transform into dark mud on the irregular stones of the street. Mrs. Hartwell's boarding house smelled of thin soup and broken dreams. There, among fallen governesses and resourceless widows, Charlotte had found refuge working as a tutor for children of prosperous merchants, a social fall that burned like salt in an open wound. The messenger arrived when the church bell marked 3 in the afternoon. His soaked boots left dark traces on the worn carpet as he extended the sealed envelope with the Ashford coat of arms. Charlotte's hands trembled as she recognized the seal. Why was he seeking her now? Mrs. Whitmore, I request your presence at my residence in Mayfair tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Matter of mutual interest and urgency. Edmund Ashford. The handwriting was firm, masculine, without flourishes. Like the man himself, she imagined. The paper was of superior quality, and Charlotte could sense the subtle aroma of bergamot that permeated the fibers. What proposal could emerge from those austere lines? The Ashford mansion rose in Mayfair like a monument to power and melancholy. Its Georgian facade of 5 floors contemplated the square with windows that seemed like tired eyes, silent witnesses to stories that only the walls knew. Charlotte was received in the main salon, where Persian rugs covered Italian marble floors, and ancestral portraits observed each movement with mute disapproval. The aroma of bound leather and beeswax floated in the air, creating an atmosphere of almost religious solemnity. Edmund Ashford approached with measured steps. Tall, with broad shoulders molded by years of military service, he bore a scar that cut across his left eyebrow, a memory of Crimea that he did not try to hide. His blue-grey eyes possessed the depth of one who had seen too much and spoken too little. Mrs. Whitmore. His voice resonated grave and controlled. I thank you for your presence. Allow me to be direct. I need a wife, and you need protection. The words fell between them like stones in a deep well. Charlotte maintained her erect posture, dignity being the only treasure that remained to her. A marriage of convenience, he continued, walking to the window that faced the snow-covered garden. Separate rooms, public appearances, mutual benefit. But why her? Why now? And what ghosts tormented that man of stone? The illness arrived like a sudden storm. Edmund had returned from a visit to the slums of East End with feverish skin and glassy eyes. Typhoid fever, diagnosed Dr. Harrison, recommending immediate isolation. Charlotte ignored the medical orders. For 5 days and 5 nights, She remained beside the mahogany bed where Edmund, delirious, cold compresses, chamomile tea, whispered words that were lost between sleep and wakefulness. The silent mansion witnessed that nascent intimacy, built not in the heat of passion, but in the patient care of one who recognizes human fragility. On the third day, he spoke in whispers. "James, forgive me, James. I should have died in the war." "Not you." Charlotte understood then that Edmund's deepest scar was not on his face, but in his soul. A younger brother, dead at 12 years old, a survivor carrying the guilt of being alive. Recovery brought conversations about Dickens, chess games, and the gradual awakening of something that neither dared to name. Would it be possible to build love upon the ruins of duty? And what price would they pay for daring to dream? The Valentine's ball at the Duke of Marlborough's mansion had transformed London into a medieval feast. Torches crackled in the candelabras, colourful tapestries adorned the walls, and music echoed through the halls like promises of romance. Charlotte wore an emerald green dress with golden details that Edmund had commissioned especially for the occasion. The fabric whispered like leaves in the wind with each movement, and she felt, for the first time in years, truly beautiful. The first waltz was a silent revelation. Edmund's hands were firm but gentle, guiding her across the dance floor with a natural elegance that contrasted with his usual reserve. Their eyes met during the melody, and Charlotte felt something awaken in her chest, a butterfly of hope beating wings against her ribs. But the music was interrupted by malicious whispers. What unusual haste for a marriage? Could there have been necessity? In the conservatory, among rare orchids and exotic palms, Charlotte overheard by chance a conversation that would change everything. Viscount Pemberton, voice intoxicated by whiskey, confessed to an accomplice. "Ashford will never discover that I forged the documents. The Whitmore boy was just a pawn, and as for Ashford's brother, well, accidents happen when one owes money to the wrong people." Charlotte's blood froze. Pemberton had not only destroyed her family, he had murdered an innocent child. How would she reveal that truth without putting both their lives at risk? The London spring arrived timidly, painting the parks with tones of tender green and renewed hope. But for Charlotte and Edmund, the season brought a dark mission: expose Pemberton without becoming his next victims. Edmund discreetly hired a private detective and a lawyer specialized in commercial fraud. Charlotte, for her part, discovered that the feminine world of high society was a more effective information network than any newspaper. In afternoon teas perfumed with jasmine and seasoned with gossip, she learned to listen beyond the words. Mrs. Pemberton, she discovered, drowned her conjugal loneliness in sherry and nerve medicines. Lady Morrison whispered about her husband's strange investments. The Countess of Whitfield mentioned suspicious loans. Each piece of porcelain that clinked was a piece of the puzzle fitting together. The great discovery came when Mrs. Pemberton herself, in a moment of alcoholic vulnerability, gave Charlotte her husband's personal diary. "He never touches me," she confessed between sobs. "Perhaps if I didn't exist." Charlotte held the woman's trembling hands. "You exist, and you have value. Help me make justice, and I will help you start anew." The diary revealed a corruption network that extended to Parliament. But would it be enough to bring down a Viscount? Buckingham Palace shone like a jewel against the night sky of May. The ball in honour of Queen Victoria's anniversary had gathered all British nobility in a demonstration of power and pomp that echoed through the golden corridors. Charlotte wore royal blue, a colour that enhanced her eyes and lent majesty to her slender figure. The Duchess of Devonshire's tiara, borrowed for the occasion, captured the lights of the crystal chandeliers like imprisoned stars. Edmund, impeccable in his decorated military uniform, walked beside her with the determination of a man who had finally found his definitive battle. In the inner pockets of his coat, he carried the evidence that could shake the foundations of the government. The moment came during the official toast. Edmund approached Queen Victoria, bowed respectfully, and with clear voice that cut through the crowd's murmur said, "Majesty, we have discovered a treason to the crown that demands your immediate attention." The silence that followed was so dense that the tinkling of crystals seemed like thunder. Charlotte, breaking all protocol, stepped forward and spoke directly to the sovereign. "Majesty, a Viscount of your trust murdered children for greed. The honour of the throne is at stake." Queen Victoria, small but imposing, fixed her penetrating eyes on Charlotte. After a moment that seemed like eternity, she smiled, a small but significant smile. "Courage is a rare quality in ladies of society. Proceed." Pemberton was arrested right there, before all the London nobility. But would this be the end of the story, or just the beginning of a new chapter? The winter gardens of the Ashford mansion bloomed in a symphony of colours and aromas. The cherry trees planted in memory of James opened in pale pink cascades, petals dancing in the air like confetti of silent celebration. Charlotte walked among the flowers, her white muslin dress undulating with the gentle April breeze. The victory over Pemberton had brought more than justice. It had brought peace. The Whitmore name had been officially cleared, the nobility titles restored. Edmund found her beside the marble fountain, where golden fish swam in slow circles like aquatic meditations. He had changed his formal attire for a simple white linen shirt, and Charlotte perceived how the fabric enhanced the colour of his eyes. "The war changed my capacity to love," he confessed, his voice softer than Charlotte had ever heard. "I thought my heart had died in Sevastopol along with so many others, but you returned me to the world of the living." Charlotte delicately touched the scar on his forehead, a gesture he allowed for the first time. "I never expected to love, only to survive. But you taught me that existing is not enough. One must truly live." The first kiss happened under the rain of cherry petals, soft as a whispered promise, intense as 4 seasons of waiting. Could it be possible that from such bitter ashes, such sweet happiness could sprout? Summer transformed London into a tapestry of green and gold. The Ashford mansion, previously silent as a mausoleum, now resonated with laughter and animated conversations. Charlotte had insisted on opening the heavy curtains, allowing natural light to flood the rooms and awaken the dormant life in the ancient woods. The 2-story library became their favourite refuge. There, among volumes of poetry and philosophy treatises, Charlotte and Edmund spent afternoons reading to each other. Their voices alternated like a literary duet, he reciting Byron with controlled passion, she interpreting Jane Austen with delicious irony. Edmund revealed himself surprisingly progressive in his opinions. He supported women's suffrage, criticized the deplorable conditions of factories, and dreamed of social reforms that would give dignity to the less fortunate. Charlotte discovered in him an idealist, disguised as a pragmatist, a man who used coldness as a shield to protect a too sensitive heart. "Your compassion will be your ruin or your redemption," Charlotte murmured one afternoon, watching him prepare food baskets to distribute in the poor neighborhoods. "If it is to ruin myself by your side, I accept the destiny gladly," he responded, and his smile contained a tenderness that made Charlotte's heart accelerate. But small clouds began to form on the horizon of their happiness. Anonymous letters arrived sporadically, insinuating that secrets about Edmund's past still remained buried. What shadows from the past could still threaten their golden future? September arrived dressed in gold and melancholy, painting the leaves with tones of amber and farewell. Charlotte was organizing Edmund's personal papers, a conjugal intimacy gradually conquered, when she found a mahogany box hidden at the bottom of the wardrobe. Inside, letters yellowed by time and faded photographs told the story of James Ashford, a boy with bright eyes and mischievous smile, eternally captured at 12 years of age. The letters revealed a cheerful personality, curious about the world, dreaming of becoming an explorer or writer. Edmund found her with tears in her eyes, holding the last letter James had written to his older brother. "Dear Ed, when you return from the war, I'll show you the castle I built in the Garden Oak. It will be our secret fort, where we'll plan adventures around the whole world." "He built a castle," Charlotte whispered. Edmund nodded, his voice choked. "In the century-old oak, at the back of the property. I never had the courage to visit it after his death." Charlotte took his hand, intertwining her fingers with his. "Perhaps it's time to honor his memory appropriately. He wouldn't want you to martyr yourself for so long." Together, they walked to the gigantic oak. There, among twisted branches that told centuries of stories, they found the remains of a treehouse built with childish love and infinite dreams. Edmund embraced the rough trunk, and for the first time in 20 years, cried for the loss of his brother. Charlotte held him while he released decades of repressed pain. Would that cry be the necessary price to be completely reborn? October brought the first frosts and correspondence that would poison the conquered tranquility. The letters arrived without sender, always at dawn like ravens bearing bad luck. Each one contained more disturbing insinuations than the previous. "Lady Ashford, do you really know whom you married? Ask him about Sebastopol. Ask him about the men who died because of his fault." Charlotte hid the letters from Edmund, but tension grew like toxic fog between them. He perceived her unease. She felt his gradual withdrawal. Conversations became cautious, silences loaded with unspoken doubts. The revelation came through Mrs. Hartwell, former owner of the boarding house in Whitechapel, who visited Charlotte to thank her for the generous pension she had established for governesses in difficulties. "Milady, a man was asking about you. Strange, with scars on his face and smell of gin, he claimed to be cousin of the late Viscount Pemberton." Charlotte froze. Richard Pemberton, the dissolute cousin who had inherited the few goods that remained after the Viscount's arrest. A bitter man, ruined by the family's fall, thirsty for revenge. The last letter was explicit. "If you do not abandon Ashford, I will reveal to the entire world that your husband killed his own commander in Crimea for cowardice. I have witnesses." How could Charlotte protect Edmund from accusations that could destroy him socially even if they were false? November wrapped London in its greyish shroud, and Charlotte knew that the moment had come to confront the ghosts that haunted their marriage. She sought Edmund in his study, a masculine space decorated with Crimean maps and military decorations he never wore. "Tell me about Sebastopol," she said simply, sitting in the leather armchair that stood before the desk where he worked. Edmund raised his eyes from the documents, and Charlotte saw something die in his gaze, the hope that the past would remain buried. "Why do you wish to know about that hell?" "Because someone is trying to use that against you. And because I am your wife, with the right to know the man with whom I share my life." The confession came in painful fragments. During the siege of Sebastopol, Edmund was a young lieutenant under the command of Colonel Hartwell, a cruel man who sent soldiers to certain deaths through incompetence or sadism. On a freezing winter morning, after Hartwell ordered a suicidal attack that would result in the death of 200 men, Edmund defied the orders. "I confronted him before the entire regiment. I said I would not allow more massacres. He drew his weapon. I defended myself. He fell, hit his head against a rock, died instantly." "You defended innocent lives," Charlotte whispered. "You were a hero, not a murderer." But no one else saw it that way. "I was tried for insubordination, deported back to England in disgrace. The decorations were given to silence the scandal." Charlotte approached him, knelt beside the chair and took his face in her hands. "The man I love is the one who protects the weak, not the one who obeys unjust orders. Richard Pemberton can spread his lies. We will face him together." But would truth be enough to defeat rumors in a society that valued obedience above justice? The storm arrived on a December night, exactly 1 year after Charlotte had lost everything. The winds howled around the Ashford mansion, like ancient furies seeking revenge, and rain lashed the windows with icy winter fingers. Richard Pemberton arrived drunk and furious, forcing entry through the main gate. Charlotte received him in the entrance hall, Edmund by her side, both dressed for the dinner that had been interrupted by the drama. Pemberton was a deteriorated version of the deceased cousin, thin, with feverish gaze and clothes that had once been elegant, but now hung loose on his body, consumed by alcohol and resentment. "Lady Ashford," he spat the words like venom. "Or should I say, Lady of the Assassin. All of London will know tomorrow that your husband is a coward who kills superiors from behind." Edmund took a step forward, but Charlotte stopped him with a subtle gesture of her hand. "Mr. Pemberton," her voice was cutting ice, "you come to my house like a thief in the night, threaten my family with lies, and expect me to receive you as a gentleman. Your own conduct reveals the value of your words." "Lies?" Pemberton laughed bitterly. "I have letters from soldiers who were there. I have proof that your husband—" "You have forged letters, just as your cousin forged commercial documents," Charlotte interrupted. "And if you have courage to spread slander, will you have courage to face a tribunal where those proofs will be examined by experts?" The silence that followed was broken only by the drumming of rain. Pemberton looked from Charlotte to Edmund, perceiving that he had underestimated the determination of both. "This is not over," he murmured, heading to the door. "No." Edmund spoke for the first time. "It ended now. Guards are coming to arrest you for property invasion and blackmail. You will spend this night in prison, reflecting on the choices that brought you here." When Pemberton was taken away under the torrential rain, Charlotte felt as if an immense weight had been lifted from her shoulders, but the true revelation was yet to come. The spring of 1879 arrived early, painting the gardens of the Ashford mansion with a palette of colours that seemed to celebrate renewed life. Charlotte walked along the gravel paths, one hand resting delicately on her belly where a new life grew. Richard Pemberton's trial had been brief and conclusive. His evidence revealed itself as crude forgeries, and the true Crimean veterans who testified confirmed Edmund's version. He had saved lives by defying a corrupt commander. He had not committed murder. More important than public vindication was the inner peace that Edmund finally found. The century-old oak where James had built his childhood castle had become a place of family pilgrimage. There Edmund had built a small memorial, not a melancholic tomb, but a vibrant garden where wild roses grew freely, like the joy that James had brought to the world in his few years of life. "He would be happy knowing that you brought hope where there was once only pain," Charlotte had murmured on a May morning, watching Edmund plant sunflower seeds, the lost brothers' favourite flowers. The orphanage they established in Kent grew like a healthy tree, offering education and affection to children that society had forgotten. The school for working girls in London taught not only sewing and good manners, but reading, mathematics, and dreams of a better future. Edmund had published his war memoirs, not as glorification of conflict, but as testimony to the need to protect the weak and question unjust authorities. The book became a tool to help other veterans process similar traumas. On this golden June morning, Charlotte found Edmund by the oak, holding a letter that had arrived with the morning mail. "The Queen has granted you the title of Sir," he said, incredulity and pride mixed in his voice, "for services to the cause of social justice." Charlotte smiled, touching again the belly where James Edmund, thus they would baptize their son, grew strong and healthy. "And you, Sir Edmund, how do you feel about having built something beautiful upon such painful ruins?" He enveloped her in his arms, and she felt the solidity of a man who had finally made peace with his past. "I feel that true love is not that which is born from perfection, but that which flourishes despite the storm. You taught me that it is possible to honor the dead by living fully." The wind whispered among the oak leaves, carrying the aroma of roses and future promises. There, under the protective shadow of the tree that had witnessed childhood dreams and adult tears, they renewed their vows not before priest or congregation, but before life itself. "Until death do us part seemed too little for us," Charlotte whispered. "I prefer until time becomes eternity, and our love becomes a memory that will inspire other hearts not to give up hope." The setting sun gilded the landscape, and somewhere distant, church bells marked the end of one day and the beginning of all the others to come.